So what we're talking about today is creating a destination risk register informed by the indicators that we're all collecting in a participatory process. And in particular, we're looking at today, just focusing on residents for you. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. So some questions that came back from using our indicators was, how can a DMO or planners meaningfully engage with the residents through the indicator framework? Also, how can we implement a realistic higher level of citizens' participation in sustainable destination planning? In particular, there we had residents when we were surveyed them saying, not another survey, we've done this before and we never heard anything else. So how do we show them that it's meaningful and show them that we're taking on board what they're saying and that we're actually tracking that for them? And then how do we integrate communities into the planning processes, such as destination strategies and policy instruments through the indicators? So how do we actually put all that together and assemble it into something that's workable? And for that, we're using our risk register. So there's a few stages in that. The first stage is, next slide, please. The first stage, our first action was to create our destination green team and to make sure that was a powerful and collaborative process. So on that team are local politicians who are elected to represent the people. Also, we have people from the local authorities, tourism enterprises, and a lot of you would have destination green teams and have similar ones there. But we had to actually educate this team on how a destination green team is going to work and put a charter in place and put governance in place and start a whole process to keep it transparent for them. And actually, we have an Insto green team coming to virtually to talk to our destinations soon from the Azores to explain some of their problems and issues. So we share what's happening within it. And I suppose the biggest challenge in getting a team together like this is to give them power and say, you have the power to make a decision with these indicators, and you have power to drive the direction of tourism forward and to prioritize things on the risk register. So next slide, please. So one of the other elements of our research when we're collecting data from residents is we also collect qualitative data. We ask them, now it's all combed and it's all anonymized, and it all goes to our ethics approval process. So nobody can be identified, but all of these comments are then put into in vivo and they're prioritized. And the amount of times they're mentioned and the severity of them are all put in through a whole process, and we identify them with maybe housing, transport, whatever else. And then we can log all of that with the destination green team and show them what's happening in the destination. Look what the residents are saying. They're 80% satisfied with tourism, but they're really worried about local housing, or they're really worried about water or biodiversity. So we can really log that. But what's even more important is the residents can see this process. This is completely open source data and it's transparent. So the residents can go in and see, oh yeah, that's my comment, or I made a comment similar to that. And now look what they're doing. And that's what Fiona will take you through. We'll show you how we can take those actions and then what's actually being done to combat them. So next slide, please. So we use the indicators, turning those indicators into insights and into direct actions. So what action are you taking because of that indicator? So it's real evidence-informed planning. Here's a very important indicator, and we're using a systematic collaborative mechanism to action that and to put it onto a risk register with it. But the most important thing for us was to communicate that back. Now, all of our data is on GIS because our planners all use it. It's their tool. So we map everything in there for them, but that's just a very small section. The enterprises who are very busy don't want to learn GIS and don't understand it. The residents don't want to, so we have to communicate with them in a different way. So how we communicate with them is through these dashboards. And really this is the work of a graphic designer, and Fiona ends up doing a lot of this to make it accessible. And we put these up electronically, and you can see our next slide, please, sorry. Yeah, you can see our dashboards there. But when we brought the green team together, we had this on PowerPoint and we were showing them, and they had been emailed it, but actually we had to print them out. on recycled paper. We had to print them out, and they wrote all over them, and they challenged them. Once it was on front of them, they start going into it in way more detail. And we found that was a really useful tool to have the physical indicator in front of them, and they could page through it and they could look through it. And the debates got really intense, and then they have to prioritize which is the most important thing for them in their destination. What's number one priority? So we have small resources, we have limited time. So what are we going to do in our destination? How are we going to prioritize this? And they have to make that decision. And it can get heated. You know, they can start, you know, debating quite strongly with each other. But the more interesting thing is, on our green team is the climate action officer for the local authority and the heritage officer. And when they were looking through the indicators, like, can we have this indicator? Can we put it in our plan? I went, that's what it's for. Will you write submissions from the green team into our plan? Yes. So all of a sudden it started becoming alive. It started growing legs. So that's sort of the element to that. And we're actually in the process of trying to get some funding and to turn these indicators into a little field guide. So someone was talking about biodiversity. So we have field guides in Ireland for identifying butterflies and things on the seashore. So we're actually going to put a waterproof guide to our indicators for the enterprises and for the residents, so they can page through it and look at it and identify different things and make it more practical and tangible. They can keep it on their ferry, they can keep it on the ports, they can go through it. We're trying everything to engage them and keep them involved in the process. So I'll pass you on to Fiona, who will take you through the details.
Thanks, James. Next slide, please. With the kind of process that James was talking about, we found it was quite important to actually put a formal kind of process in place, just so people could like see it and track it and know the start to finish. It was really important in this to see as a group what has already been completed and what's already in place. We kind of figured out that some of the issues that residents were bringing up, there was already a project 3 years in the line that had another 3 years to go. So this was really important to do first. And then we thought it was really important to bring in policy, what policies are in place surrounding that issue. For example, in the EU, we have the EU Green Deal, Water Framework Directive. Then we were going to bring in our Green Team risk register, get the resulting actions, and highlight responsibility timelines. And as James mentioned before, really important, a Green Team response to the public, as like alongside the results, carry out actions and then repeat process. So obviously sustainability always changing, the baseline always change, issues come up and down. So the whole process will have to be repeated again and again. Next slide, please. Through the certification process that one of the destinations that we work with, they're called EarthCheck. They're a large certifying external body, and they have something called a risk register. We wanted to kind of amalgamate this since we already have to do it, and kind of bring in the key stakeholders within that process. So adapt it for our own use. Next slide, please. So this kind of risk register here, the top severity risk, so that's like the likelihood of, or basically the risk of not addressing this issue. How severe will the resulting issue be? Left on the likelihood, we kind of saw this as likelihood, or what is the issue being seen frequency wise, what are the indicators telling us? And then below, that was our kind of addition. So that's the Green Team assessment ranking. So we asked them to go through the indicators and essentially rank their issues from 1 to 5 on what they would like to see. The top on severity, obviously risk can be a bit subjective. So we thought that we actually need to have technical people in there that can help us assess the severity of not addressing that risk. So for example, our climate change officer would help us determine that. And then what the likelihood on the left would be ranked as, that would be what the indicator results are actually telling us. In this, it kind of creates like a check and balance, so that the technical side can come through, the green team have a say, and the indicator results also have a say. Next slide, please. As we were saying, for the dashboards themselves, they're great for like motivation and communication. This is where it comes into the standard Word doc. As the group, we've listed the indicators down in the entire document. It'll be sent around the green team. It has done. The results as well, and then they can rank from 1 to 5 what they would like to see. We're in phase 1, so that's the green kind of columns in the middle. Phase 2 will be the resulting actions. Next slide, please. In this, we're going to use this to, as James is saying, to support our sustainable destination strategy and policy instruments. Next slide, please. When we were in the group, we were requested to submit to the Heritage Plan using the indicators and the Green Team assessment. Our indicator results were actually very similar to their studies that they were doing, so they were kind of comforted in that. And next slide, please. We were also asked to submit to the draft climate action plan. It was kind of interesting because the current climate action plan had very low uptake in residents' contributions. We maybe thought that this is because they don't understand the plan or they don't understand the technical language. With this group, we feel like it's very powerful because we've explained the indicators and can go into it as a group, which holds a lot more power. Also, additionally, the climate change officer initially thought that maybe we didn't need to submit because they already had a transport plan, for example. But we were basically communicating saying that, yes, you have a plan, but our data supports tourism, which isn't really being reflected. And it's different to how residents travel around from their homes to the city for work. We need different ways to get tourism to travel around the destination. Next slide, please. In this kind of all came about through the destination's strategy in general. One of their actions was basically to create a internationally recognized destination that was sustainable. And that's how essentially me and James got on board. In this, it kind of ties into that certification process, the indicators, in essentially proving that they're working towards becoming more sustainable. Next slide, please. So yeah, we're basically using the indicator to quantify and frame sustainable actions. Next slide, please. Thank you for your support. This is one of the cliffs of Moher with 2 fishermen in Ireland. Thank you for your support. Thank you.